The adventure that became a nightmare. Imagine crawling through a cave passage, so narrow that you couldn't turn around. Now imagine getting stuck, upside down, more than 100 feet underground. No room to move, no way to escape, and every minute making rescue even more difficult. On November 24th, 2009, a Thanksgiving weekend adventure inside Utah's Nutty Putty cave turned into one of the most heartbreaking rescue attempts in American history. The man trapped inside was John Edward Jones. He entered the cave expecting a fun family outing. He never came back out. This is the true story of the Nutty Putty cave tragedy. A passion for adventure. John Jones wasn't an experienced extreme caver searching for danger. He was a 26-year-old medical student, a devoted husband, and the father of a young daughter. Friends described him as intelligent, kind, and deeply devoted to his family. Growing up in Utah, John had visited caves before. During Thanksgiving in 2009, he returned home to spend time with relatives. Looking for an activity they could enjoy together, John and several family members decided to explore Nutty Putty Cave. It seemed like the perfect holiday adventure. None of them imagined it would become international news. The cave had a reputation, not for beauty, but for confusing passages that had trapped explorers before. Yet thousands of people had visited it over the years. So why did this trip end differently? The cave beneath the desert. Located about 55 miles south of Salt Lake City, Nutty Putty Cave wasn't known for massive underground chambers. Instead, it was famous for its incredibly tight passageways. Some tunnels were so narrow that explorers had to crawl on their stomachs. Others required squeezing through openings only slightly wider than a human body. The cave's unusual shape made it popular with adventurous explorers, but it also carried serious risks. Over the years, rescue teams had responded to numerous incidents involving trapped visitors. Most escaped safely. Some required hours of careful rescue. The cave had already developed a reputation among experienced cavers as a place where mistakes could quickly become dangerous. The wrong turn. On the evening of November 24th, 2009, John entered the cave with family members. As they explored deeper underground, the group separated while navigating different passages. John believed he had found a route leading toward a chamber known as the birth canal. Instead, he entered a much narrower passage that had never been intended as a route for exploration. The tunnel became progressively tighter. To move forward, John had to crawl headfirst. Then, the passage narrowed even more. Before he realized his mistake, it was too late. John tried to reverse, but nothing happened. His chest couldn't expand properly. His feet couldn't find leverage. He wasn't just trapped. He was wedged upside down inside solid rock. A terrifying discovery. The opening measured only about 10 by 18 inches at its narrowest point. John's body became tightly wedged inside the passage. His head pointed downward at roughly a 70-degree angle. Blood rushed toward his head. Every breath became harder than the last. He pushed against the cave walls, tried twisting his shoulders, attempted to pull backward. Nothing worked. The more he struggled, the tighter he became lodged. Above him, the rest of the cave remained silent. His family had no idea what had happened. The search begins when John failed to return. His brother, Josh, began searching through nearby passages. Eventually, he heard John's voice echoing faintly through the cave. The realization was immediate. John wasn't delayed. He was trapped. Josh immediately called for help. Within a short time, emergency responders, cave rescue specialists, and experienced volunteers rushed toward Nutty Putty Cave. None of them yet understood how difficult the rescue would become. At first, rescuers believed they could free John within an hour. Instead, the operation would continue through the night and become one of the most technically challenging cave rescues in American history. More than 100 feet below the surface, John remained trapped upside down. Rescuers assembled ropes, pulley systems, medical equipment, and rescue specialists from across Utah. Everyone believed there was still time, but the cave had other plans. The rescue that captivated the world. At first, rescuers believed John Jones would be free within an hour. After all, people had been trapped in Nutty Putty Cave before. Most survived, but as the rescue team reached John, they immediately realized this case was unlike anything they had ever faced. One wrong move could cost him his life. The impossible position. When rescuers finally reached John, the reality became painfully clear. He wasn't simply stuck. He was wedged tightly inside a passage barely wider than his shoulders. His body was angled nearly head down, with his arms pinned beneath him. He couldn't raise his hands. He couldn't push himself backward. Even speaking required tremendous effort. The deeper he breathed, the tighter his chest pressed against the rock. Medical experts knew this position created a serious problem. Being suspended upside down for long periods places enormous strain on the heart and lungs. Blood begins pooling in the upper body. Breathing becomes increasingly difficult. And with every passing hour, the danger grows. Despite the terrifying situation, John remained remarkably calm, and his words gave rescuers hope. John never gave up. Throughout the rescue, John spoke with emergency responders. He answered questions, followed instructions, and even tried to stay positive despite the unimaginable circumstances. Rescuers later recalled how cooperative he remained. He repeatedly attempted to shift his body whenever instructed, but the cave refused to let go. Every small movement seemed to wedge him even tighter. Still, no one was ready to give up. Building a rescue system, because there wasn't enough room for several rescuers to work at once. They had to build a specialized rope and pulley system deep inside the cave. Anchors were drilled into the cave walls. Heavy-duty climbing ropes were threaded through narrow passages. Carabiners, harnesses, mechanical pulleys. Every piece of equipment had to be carried hundreds of feet underground by hand. It took hours just to assemble the rescue system. Finally, everything was ready. The team began pulling. Slowly, carefully, inches at a time. For the first time, John actually started moving. Hope returned. Then, without warning, everything changed. The moment the rescue failed. As rescuers applied steady pressure, one of the critical anchor points suddenly failed. The anchor pulled free from the cave wall. The pulley system collapsed. The rescue ropes instantly lost tension. John's body slid back into the narrow passage, even deeper than before. The progress that had taken hours disappeared in seconds. For many rescuers, it was the moment they realized the situation might be impossible. They immediately rebuilt the system. But the collapse had made John's position even more dangerous. Time was running out. Hour after hour passed. Doctors monitoring the rescue became increasingly concerned. John had now spent many hours suspended upside down. His circulation was severely compromised. His heart was under extreme stress. Rescuers continued searching for new ideas. Different angles, different rope systems, different approaches. But every option faced the same obstacle. The passage was simply too narrow. There wasn't enough room to safely maneuver his body. Every rescue attempt risked causing even more harm. Above ground, John's family waited through the night, praying for a miracle, the family's longest night. Outside the cave, family members refused to leave. Volunteers arrived with food. Medical teams remained on standby. News helicopters circled overhead. As word spread across Utah, people everywhere began hoping for good news. John's wife, Emily, was pregnant with their second child. She waited anxiously as rescue teams continued working through the night. Every update brought renewed hope. Every delay increased concern. No one wanted to believe the rescue could fail. The final hours. By the following day, rescuers had been working almost continuously for more than 24 hours. John's condition became increasingly unstable. Communication grew quieter. Medical experts knew his body had endured extraordinary stress. Despite every effort, there was very little anyone could do inside such an incredibly confined space. Then, just after midnight on November 25, 2009, rescuers received the news they had feared. John Jones had died while still trapped inside the cave. He was only 26 years old. The rescue operation immediately shifted from rescue to recovery. But even after John's death, one heartbreaking decision still remained. A decision that would permanently change Nutty Putty Cave forever. Engineers carefully evaluated every possible recovery plan. Could John's body be safely removed? Or would attempting another rescue place even more lives at risk? The answer would lead authorities to make one of the most emotional decisions in the history of American cave exploration. The cave that was sealed forever. John Jones' rescue was over. But one heartbreaking question remained. Could rescuers bring him home? Or had the cave claimed him forever? The answer would lead to a decision unlike anything in American rescue history. One that still sparks emotion more than 15 years later. The recovery that could never happen. After John's death, Rescue teams carefully evaluated every possible option. The goal was simple: bring him back to his family. But the reality inside the cave was devastating. John remained trapped more than 100 feet underground inside one of the narrowest passages in the entire cave. The tunnel was unstable, extremely confined, and dangerously difficult to access. Engineers and rescue specialists concluded that attempting another recovery operation would place additional rescuers at unacceptable risk. Another collapse, or another trapped rescuer, could create an even greater tragedy. It was one of the hardest decisions anyone involved had ever faced. Then came an announcement that shocked the entire country. Nutty Putty Cave would never reopen. The cave was permanently sealed. Following extensive discussions with rescue experts, state officials, and John's family, authorities made a historic decision. Instead of attempting another dangerous recovery, Nutty Putty Cave would be permanently sealed. The entrance was filled with concrete. Steel reinforcement was installed. Rock was placed over the opening. From that day forward, no one would ever enter the cave again. John Jones' final resting place would remain exactly where he became trapped. The cave itself became his memorial. It was an emotional decision, but one made to prevent future tragedies. A family's incredible strength. For John's family, no decision could erase the pain. John left behind his wife, Emily, who was expecting their second child. He also left behind a young daughter who would grow up knowing her father through photographs, stories, and the memories shared by loved ones. Despite unimaginable grief, the Jones family publicly thanked the rescuers who had risked their own lives trying to save John. Many rescue workers later said they would never forget the experience. Some described it as the most emotionally difficult mission of their careers. Their determination reflected the extraordinary commitment of first responders who refused to give up, even when the odds became overwhelming. As the years passed, John's story spread far beyond Utah. Millions of people who had never heard of Nutty Putty Cave became fascinated by what happened. A story that reached the world. The Nutty Putty tragedy became one of the most widely discussed cave rescue stories in history. Books, documentaries, podcasts, and educational videos examine the incident from every angle. Many focused on the technical challenges of cave rescues. Others explored the psychology of extreme exploration. In 2016, the feature film, The Last Descent, introduced John's story to an even wider audience. While dramatized for film, it helped many viewers discover the real events and the courage shown by rescuers and John's family. Today, millions continue searching for the Nutty Putty story every year, not because of sensationalism, but because it reminds people how quickly an ordinary adventure can change forever. Yet perhaps the greatest legacy of this tragedy isn't found inside the cave. It's found in the lessons it left behind. Lessons that changed cave exploration. John's death led many organizations to reevaluate cave safety. Across the United States, rescue teams reviewed emergency procedures. Some caves introduced stricter access policies. Others increased visitor education about confined space risks. Experienced cavers continue emphasizing an important lesson. Even caves that appear familiar can become deadly after a single wrong turn. Preparation, training, proper equipment, and respecting personal limits are essential. Nature is beautiful, but it also demands humility. Remembering John Jones. More than anything, John Jones is remembered not for how he died, but for how he lived. He was a loving husband, a devoted father, a son, a brother, a friend, a medical student who hoped to spend his life helping others. Those who knew him remembered his optimism, his faith, his compassion, his adventurous spirit. While the tragedy became internationally known, his family has always hoped people would remember the person behind the headlines. Long after the rescue ended, long after the cave was sealed, John Jones' story continues to remind us that life is fragile, family is precious, and every moment with the people we love truly matters. Final thoughts. The Nutty Putty Cave tragedy remains one of the most heartbreaking rescue stories in American history. It wasn't simply a story about a cave. It was a story about courage, hope, determination, and the extraordinary efforts of rescuers who refused to stop trying. Although John Jones never returned home, his story continues to educate future generations about cave safety and inspire people to appreciate the moments they share with loved ones. Sometimes, The greatest legacy isn't measured by how long someone lived, but by how deeply they touched the lives of those around them. Thank you for watching this documentary. If you enjoy true stories, survival documentaries, and real-life mysteries, please like this video and subscribe for more fact-based documentaries every week. Speech Balloon, what part of John Jones' story affected you the most? If you know of another remarkable true story we should cover next, share it in the comments below.